Now, this idea of the Divine Comedy is very difficult for Dave to integrate, because the rational mind that is predominant in the philosophical phase wants to rationalize and justify, and intellectual mind thought is critical analysis. You know, the categories of thought, everything needs to make sense and have a place and an order to it and all that. And the idea of the Divine Comedy is the integration of a both and rather than an either or. And when it comes to the categories of mind and thought process and philosophy and critical analysis, it's either this or that, which, by the way, affirms the first stage. The Hardy folk belief has to have something to fight against, something to place itself in opposition to it. The building of forms in general is to take things as they are and then do something with them. So it takes this is not going to focus on two things. It takes life too seriously. Too personally. But in the next phase of summer and fall, we take ourselves so personally that we can't take ourselves seriously enough, and it goes to an extreme. Anyway, we had a productive talk. You know, these conversations, these ideas develop over time, and we use our practical life experience on a daily basis to test the theory, to see, you know, what works or what doesn't work. But ultimately, we end up being who we are, and we end up giving it what we have to give. But I was telling Dave, you got to develop the consciousness to the point of where you can accept the mystery in this Divine Comedy, where it's a both and rather than an either or. It's both good and bad mixed together, and yet it still continually blindly affirms itself. This blind yes to life. But what often happens is that someone that comes to this perspective is not taken seriously enough by anybody, because they don't take anything too damn serious. And the people who are caught up in taking things too seriously, the people who are caught up in we've got to develop, we've got to be stronger, we've got to be better, we've got to be more excellent, we've got to do. You know, this doesn't affirm them, because their ultimate affirmation is in the dark elements and setting themselves in opposition to these dark elements. Whereas once you've already passed your high time, you look back and you say, oh, those were the greatest of days, the greatest of times. And so you affirm the light, meaning having experienced the dark, you affirm the light. You say there's a great yes that is the affirmative. Many of the conflicts in the world are many of the great battles that have been won over the darkest elements have required setting oneself up in opposition to this dark element in life. But then once you become that dark element, you realize, I do not set myself in opposition to the dark element. I set myself in affirmation of the light element. I choose to affirm the life affirming. But, you know, hindsight's 20/20. You have to go there in order to come back. And not everybody has the innate constitution to come back. Many people just go to that death-like contemplation and don't have it in them to come back with an affirmative yes. And this, I think, some have tapped into this idea when they say that the Western person thinks of emptiness as devoid of any value, purpose, or meaning. Nihilism. And understanding that everybody has these different postures and stances to take with life, depending upon the phase they're at. You can realize that the Western person, in their going and doing and being and making things happen and changing the world, they get caught up in their own perspective, and they turn a blind eye to how even the darkest elements can bring about an arising within us of the most affirming. And that without facing that darkness and integrating it and realizing that we've got what it takes to live through it, we find our affirmation through that struggle. But we get caught up in our roles we play. We take ourselves too personally. And Campbell talks about a personal God and an impersonal God. And if we take ourselves too personally, then our own personality will contaminate the Godhead. And we will interpret the Godhead too personally. And what I'm getting here is a matter of terms and phrases, a matter of definition and everything. And basically what I'm saying is that which is eternal is timeless. Being timeless, its orientation is not for the concern, not oriented towards the concerns of time, but towards the concerns of the timeless, that which is transcendent of time, that which is eternal. So we may be feeling all the sufferings down here, but from that ultimate view, it's just blind, joyful participation in the field of time and all its phenomena. And we get back to the divine comedy of it all. There is something within us that affirms life and that is good and excellent. However, if we take it too personally, we set ourselves in opposition to certain aspects of life that we interpret as in opposition to us, opposed to us. And then we get caught up in a conflict and a fight. And that conflict and a fight creates its own sufferings because we have set ourselves up in opposition to whatever we're opposing. And there are many people out there that just can't integrate that. They don't have it in them yet to swallow that bitter pill. To love unwillingly is a bitter pill. To love unlovingly, bitterer still.